Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So in this one, we're going to talk about another important concept in Python, something that, is really easy to understand, but something that is going to come to play a lot as we move forward, especially in the upcoming practice, sessions and also upcoming projects that we're going to do. So I thought I would talk about this and get you familiarized with the concept. So in this one, we're going to talk about tuples. Now, tuples are, like dictionaries and lists, a way to store information in Python. But there is a specific difference in tuples which, is going to set it aside. And that is the fact that tuples, or whatever you store inside a tuple, actually does not change. So let's actually go ahead and talk a little bit about this. So what is a tuple? So far we've talked about a dictionary, right? So for example, I'm going to call this example dictionary. Okay. All right, so we can again create a dictionary. We can call it again, let's say city. We can have again key pair values, right? So CT, and then we can actually have, for example, there you go. So city, Los Angeles. There you go. So just like that, again, we can have a lot of different values inside. I can add a different one. For example, I can say state, and this is going to be California. Right? So just like that, this is a very basic dictionary. We've talked about it, we're very familiar with this concept. So next one is actually lists, right? We've talked about lists. For example, list example, let's create one. All right, so and that is basically a very simple bracketed list. For example, we got numbers here in this one, so we got just a bunch of numbers, like all that stuff. So again, we've talked about lists, nothing complicated. Now again, one thing that is very special about these two is that you can actually edit them, right? So for example, let's actually get rid of the, well, it doesn't matter. Let's for example, edit the list. For example, I'm going to change the second number in this list. I'm going to change the 24 to 99, all right? So if I want to do that, I can say list example, and we can call this, again, 99 is, for example, well, let's change the 12 to 100, right? So that's going to be 3, right? So that's the reference number, the index number, and we're going to change it to 100. So just like that, I can actually change it to 100, and and if I print this, the list example, there you go. Well, there you go. So if I print this, we're going to get the new list here, and that is going to have the value of 100 at the end. So again, we've talked about lists and dictionaries, nothing new here. But a tuple actually is going to look a little bit different. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you have not. So a tuple is going to look like this. I'm just going to say my tuple. This is a variable, all right? And it's going to be inside a parentheses. So again, it's going to look like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, it can be any value. It can be variables. It can be strings, anything you want. You can put inside a tuple, and just like that, you have a tuple. Now, as I said, a tuple is not something you can change. So, and if you print it, by the way, so let's just print my tuple. There you go. So if I print it, it's going to come out exactly like the way you think it's going to come out, like in parentheses, and just like that, that's going to be our tuple. All right. So that's that. Now, if you want to actually change the value inside a tuple, we cannot. Take a look. So if I want to, let's get rid of the print here, right? And if I want to say, for example, my tuple, and let's change the first number. So I would say 0, right? That's the index number. And the way actually you reference values inside a tuple is exactly the way you reference values inside a list. Again, kind of same thing, right? So 0 is going to be the first value because, again, it indexes. That means that index starts from 0, right? So let's do that. Let's actually set this to, for example, 5, all right? So if I do this, if I run this, I see we're going to get this error. It says type error, tuple object does not support item assignment, meaning that it cannot change. So just like that, that tells us, hey, you can't change anything inside this tuple. So that's the difference between the tuple and a list or a dictionary. The tuples, you cannot change values inside. Now, there is a way to change values inside a tuple, which I'll talk about it, but it's just not ideal. Now, the reason you might want to use a tuple is, there are a few reasons really. So one is that you can use it in web design to store RGB colors. So if you're familiar with RGB, I'm not sure if you are, but if you are, if you think about RGB colors are essentially, color codes that are going to have 3 numbers inside a parenthesis, which is going to look exactly like a tuple, as you see. I'm going to leave a link, by the way, to this web page so you can check it out for yourself. But as you see, it starts with an RGB. RGB stands for red, green, blue. All right. And then it's going to just have 3 numbers inside a parentheses, which is a tuple. And these are numbers from 0 to 255. And the way this works is that it's going to basically add a certain amount of red, green, and blue and mix them up together. For example, if we say, something like this, if you just, I don't know what color is this, but like this is kind of a goldish color or yellowish color. Take a look. So we have, 205 of red, 173 of green, and then 1 of blue or something like that. See guys, so this is an RGB color which is inside a tuple, and this is what I wanted to actually talk about. The idea with this is that we can actually create a lot of random colors using these RGB inside a tuple, and that's something I want to talk about in next lessons. But when you see numbers inside a parenthesis or values inside a parenthesis, that is basically the concept of a tuple. So one more thing I want to talk about is that you can actually turn a tuple into a list. All right, so right now, if I print this again, let me just print this one more time, my tuple. So if I print this, we're going to get this, obviously, these values inside this tuple, right? So I can actually turn it to a list. If I want to, I can do that. So the way you want to do it is that you can, turn this into, obviously call that, variable, and I'm just calling it list, and then we're going to put it inside this list, function and list method. And just like that, we're going to turn it into a tuple. I'm just going to print this one more time. And if I do this, we're not going to get these numbers inside a tuple format. We're going to get them in a list format. There you go. See guys? So we just got it inside a list format. So this is the concept of a tuple. And, you can actually turn it to a list if you want. All right. But again, I just wanted to share this with you guys because it's something we're going to use in the next few lessons. I want to talk a little bit more about, turtle graphics. And also we have a very interesting project, which we're going to talk about later on. But, but I just wanted to point this out before we get into it. So in next one, actually, I want to talk about RGB colors a little bit more and kind of the concept of RGB colors, RGB color creation, and things like that before we get into our cool projects. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions about tuples. If not, I'll see you